Hi there, art historians. I want to talk to you briefly about what I mean when I say style. And specifically, you are going to be creating a written report. Your first written report is going to be looking at an unfamiliar late medieval or proto-Renaissance artwork. So that means an artwork that we are not familiar with from the reading. So not this one, right? But something from a similar time period and location. So you will be looking at artwork made in Italy or Northern Europe during this time. I am specifically limiting the location and time because I want you looking at artwork of this transitional period. I don't want you looking for Gothic art or Byzantine art. I want you looking for this stuff that is late medieval proto-Renaissance. If you aren't sure if your artwork qualifies, you can let me know what you're thinking about and we'll take a look at it. But the other thing I want to, like I said, talk to you about is style. Now, style, when we get into the 20th century, is the phrase we use to talk about, different groups of artwork. So we have the regional styles and the international styles of impressionism or regionalism or expressionism or pop art or whatever thing it is. But we are talking about a much earlier time when we didn't have, when geographical constraints meant that people were making art more like the people around them. So in this course, when we're talking about style, particularly in written reports, I will often say this whole chunk. I'll say the style of the artwork, and then I'll say time period, culture, location. And the reason I'm doing that is because you're not always going to find your sources that are talking about the style of this work is blah, blah, blah. And because once we get into the Renaissance, one way of talking about the work is that everything we talk about is Renaissance, and that's too broad. I want you narrowing that down a little bit. Northern Renaissance and Italian Renaissance are different. There's different stuff going on there. Early Renaissance that we're going to be talking about in the first written report is different than later High Renaissance. So I want you narrowing it down into a little bit more specific. So when you write about your artwork, you are going to start by telling me, this is the style, culture, time period, da, da, da. So you're going to say, I am talking about, this particular painting, whatever painting, or sculpture, or whatever it is. And this particular artwork was made in Italy in whatever year, and that means this is a proto-Renaissance, or you might want to say that this is a late medieval artwork. Those are hopefully the styles you're focusing on, because that's the assignment. And then you can get a little bit more specific when you talk about that. In the body of your paper, you are going to be talking about how each of these things, how the visual structure helps us recognize that this is a proto-Renaissance artwork or a late medieval artwork. And I'm using those two pretty much interchangeably. You might talk to us about how the physical properties help you identify that this was made in Italy and not in Northern Europe. Or you might be able to talk about the subject and symbolism, the iconography, the conventions, help you identify the time period, the style. For this first report, you will be all talking about proto-Renaissance / or late medieval. Everybody's talking about that thing. If you are describing a Romanesque work or a high Renaissance work, if your artist is Leonardo da Vinci, you are not doing this assignment correctly. But assuming you've got an artwork that's the right time period, then you are going to be describing that artwork with an idea, with an aim to be describing the style in general. This first one, though, is going to be a little tougher because it's the first one, right? You don't have a lot to compare it to. So in the first written report, I want you to describe these things in the artworks, particularly for this paragraph, but really for any of these, if it applies. I want you thinking about how you're reading, how what you're reading told us about the important things of late medieval or early Renaissance show up in the artwork that you are talking about. So you might be looking at an artwork that has Byzantine influence that you've read about in the assignment, in the reading. You've read about some of the things that come from Byzantium, come from Byzantine influence. You might be talking about some of the innovations that your artist is making in ways of depicting people or space. You might be talking about some Gothic influence, right? And any of these things are things that we can say about the style in general. They might apply, depending what your artwork is, to your artwork in particular. They help us describe the style, and they are supported by what the textbook says. All right? When you get into the assignment, don't forget to scroll down. This is written report 1. Don't forget to scroll down. You've got to click here on both the assignment specifications, which is a lot of reading, right? But you might want to print this out and take a highlighter to it. Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Really importantly, you've got to have your paragraphs in this order. The report is not meant to be excessively complicated. Part of the reason for giving you this organization is so that it does not get too complicated. All right? Let me know if you have questions. Thanks.